Illed the air. Then all was still. Elias knelt beside her as she collapsed to her knees, trembling. Her body shook with exhaustion from using her power. "Hey," he said softly, catching her before she fell. "You did good." Her eyes fluttered open. "You risked everything." "For me," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "Guess that makes us even." She looked at his shoulder where blood soaked through his uniform. Her hand trembled as she touched it gently. "Foolish human," she whispered. "You bleed for me," he chuckled. "You started it." Despite the pain, a small, real smile touched her lips. She leaned closer, her voice quiet and filled with something she didn't understand. "When I return to my throne, they will never understand this." Elias met her gaze, his eyes steady. "Then don't go back as the same person." For a moment, the Empress of the Zyrans looked at the human soldier who had saved her, fought for her, and touched her soul. And she realized the war she feared most was no longer between their species. It was inside her heart. The battlefield had fallen silent. Smoke drifted lazily into the air, carrying the scent of blood and burned metal. Elias sat beside the dying fire again, his shoulder wrapped in a torn piece of cloth. The Empress sat across from him, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. She looked stronger now, though her gaze was distant, full of thoughts she couldn't escape. For the first time in her life, Erin felt lost. She, the ruler of 1,000 worlds, could not command her own heart. Elias noticed her silence. "You're thinking too much again," he said softly, trying to ease the weight in the air. Her eyes lifted to him. "A ruler must think," she replied. "If I stop thinking, I lose everything." He gave a small smile. "Maybe sometimes you need to lose something, to find what really matters." Her gaze softened, but she quickly looked away. "You speak like a philosopher, soldier." He laughed quietly. "Nah, I just speak like someone who's been alone too long." There was a pause, a gentle kind of silence that carried warmth instead of distance. The wind moved through the broken metal around them, whispering like voices from another world. Finally, she spoke again. "When I return, my people will expect vengeance. They will want to crush your kind for the wars we fought, and I—" She hesitated, the word heavy on her tongue. "I'm supposed to lead them." Elias leaned forward slightly. "And what do you want?" Her lips parted, but no words came out. She looked at him, really looked, at the man who had risked his life, who had carried her through fire and fear, who had seen her not as a queen, but as a person. Something in her chest twisted painfully. "I don't know anymore," she whispered. Elias reached out slowly, careful not to startle her. His hand rested gently on her uninjured arm. The touch was small, but it carried more meaning than any words could. Her breath caught. Every instinct told her to pull away, to maintain her dignity, her royal distance. But she didn't. Instead, she let his hand stay. "You once told me," Elias said softly, "that only your consort can touch you there." Her eyes flickered with memory and heat. "And yet, I did not stop you." He smiled faintly. "Maybe that means something." The Empress lowered her gaze, her voice trembling like fragile glass. "You cannot be my consort, Elias. You are human, you are forbidden." He gave a half smile, though his eyes were sad. "Yeah, I figured as much." "But," she said, her voice breaking slightly, "forbidden things are often the most precious." That sentence hung between them, heavy with emotion. The fire crackled softly, painting her face with orange light. She looked ethereal, both alien and heartbreakingly human. Then a sharp sound broke the moment, the distant roar of engines. Elias turned his head. "They're coming again." Erin stood, her expression tightening. "No," she whispered, closing her eyes. "This sound—" "It is not patrols. It is the royal carrier. My people have found me." Elias rose too. "So that's it then." She looked at him with a mix of fear and sorrow. "If they see you, they will execute you. My guards will not understand this bond. Then I'll run," he said simply. Her voice trembled. "And leave me." He smiled gently. "You'll tell them I saved your life. That's all that needs saying." She stared at him, eyes shining with unshed tears, something her kind never showed. "You think I can forget you that easily?" He took a step closer, his voice low. "No, but you can survive. That's what matters." Before she could speak again, bright lights broke through the clouds. The great shadow of the royal ship loomed above them, descending with thunderous grace. Soldiers in silver armor poured out, shouting in Xiran tongue. Elias stepped back, keeping his hands low. The Empress's heart pounded painfully. Every instinct screamed to protect him, but she was their ruler. Her word was law. Go, she whispered urgently. Run into the canyon, now! Elias looked at her one last time. Take care, Your Majesty, she swallowed hard. No, take care, Elias. Their eyes met, one human, one alien, and for a moment the universe seemed to hold its breath. Then Elias turned and vanished into the smoke, leaving her standing alone as the soldiers surrounded her. The Empress raised her head proudly as they bowed, pretending not to feel the emptiness growing inside her chest. And when the commander asked, "My Empress, who aided you?" she answered softly, "No one. I survived alone," but inside her heart she whispered the truth. I survived because of him. Days passed since her rescue. The grand palace of Zira shone brighter than ever, tall spires of crystal and gold rising above a city of light. Songs were sung of the Empress's bravery. The people believed she had fought through the flames alone and returned stronger. But behind those shining walls, Aaron felt hollow. Every council meeting, every victory celebration, every loyal cheer, they all sounded distant. Her mind was elsewhere, always wandering back to that burning battlefield, to a human's rough hands, his steady eyes, and the quiet warmth that had made her feel alive. She had thought time would dull it. It hadn't. One evening, as twin moons rose above her balcony, Aaron stood alone, dressed in flowing silver robes. The wind played with her hair and the stars reflected in her eyes. A soft voice echoed in her mind. "Guess that makes us even." His words, his smile. She pressed a hand against her heart, whispering to the night, "Where are you now, Elias?" Far away on the outer edge of a forgotten colony, Elias worked quietly among the ruins of an old outpost. He had survived, but barely. He'd wandered for weeks before a scavenger ship found him and took him in. Now he lived simply, fixing machines, trading supplies, and keeping to himself. But sometimes, when the wind blew through the canyons, he swore he could still smell the scent of alien fire lilies, the same flowers that had surrounded her throne. He tried to forget. He told himself she had her world, her people, her duty, and he was just a soldier. But no matter how many times he repeated it, the memory of her touch refused to fade. Aaron could no longer bear it. That night, she called her advisor and ordered her personal ship prepared in secret. "Where to, Your Majesty?" he asked cautiously. She hesitated only for a heartbeat. "To the human border," she said. The advisor's eyes widened. "That is forbidden territory." "So is the truth," she replied quietly. 2 days later, a small ship entered the ruins of the human colony. Dust rose as its landing gear touched the ground. Elias, busy fixing a solar relay, froze when he heard the sound. His pulse quickened. He turned slowly, and when he saw the elegant silver craft, his breath caught. The ramp opened. Light poured out, and from the glow stepped the Empress herself. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. The air between them felt alive, filled with everything they hadn't said. Elias finally found his voice. "Didn't think you'd ever come back." Aaron took a slow step toward him. Her voice trembled, though she tried to sound regal. "I told myself I wouldn't. I told myself it was impossible. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw you." He smiled softly. "Your people know you're here?" She shook her head. "They think I'm on a diplomatic visit." "Maybe I am." To my heart. For a long time, neither spoke. The wind whispered between them. Finally, she reached out, hesitant, uncertain, and touched his shoulder the same way he once had. Her eyes shimmered. "When you helped me that day, I told you only my consort could touch me there." He nodded slowly, remembering her words. She stepped closer, her voice barely a whisper. "Then perhaps it is time I made that true." Elias froze. His throat tightened. "Aaron, you don't have to." She placed a finger gently against his lips. "I am the Empress. I choose my fate, and I choose you." The words hung in the air like a promise. Elias stared at her, unsure whether to believe it, but the tears shining in her alien eyes were real. Slowly, he wrapped his arms around her and she leaned into him, trembling not from fear but from release. For the first time, she didn't feel like an empress. She felt human. The stars above them burned brighter, as if the universe itself bore witness to something sacred, something rare. Two souls from different worlds, bound not by power or blood but by courage, by kindness, by the simple act of caring when no one else would. Aaron whispered against his chest. In another life, perhaps this would have been easy. He smiled sadly. Maybe this is that other life. And under the twin moons, the alien empress and the human soldier stood together, not as ruler and subject, not as enemies, but as two hearts that had defied a galaxy's worth of reason just to find each other again. For once, the war between their worlds no longer mattered. Only the quiet beat of their hearts did. Her expression softened. It is a big deal here, too. I understand your confusion. But the bond is not something we plan. It happens. He leaned forward a little. You really believe that? Just one look and, Saren's gaze didn't waver. It is not only the eyes that see, Daniel. It is the soul. Her words hit him like a quiet thunder. He didn't know what to say. No one had ever spoken to him like that before. People saw his scars, his uniform, his past, but never his soul. He looked down, staring at the shimmering reflection of the suns on the fountain's water. I'm not who you think I am, he said after a moment. I'm a soldier. I've done things I'm not proud of. I've killed. I've lost people. Whatever you think you see in me, it's not light. Saren took a slow step closer. The air around her seemed to hum faintly, as if even the world leaned in to listen. You think darkness cannot live beside light? You are wrong. I have seen darkness too. It teaches us where the light truly is. Her words were so gentle, yet they tore through him. He looked up and their eyes met again. For a moment, Daniel forgot he was just a man and she was a princess from another world. In her gaze, he didn't feel small. He didn't feel broken. He felt seen. You fought to protect your kind, she said quietly. You carry pain, but you still hope. You still choose peace over hate. That is what makes your soul resonate with mine. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. You don't even know me. Saren smiled faintly. Then let me learn. The simplicity of her words left him speechless. A soft breeze drifted through the garden, carrying a faint silver glow from the trees. The moment felt fragile, almost sacred. Daniel didn't move, afraid that if he did, the spell would break. After a long silence, he asked, What happens if your people don't accept this bond? Her smile faded slightly, but her eyes stayed calm. Then I will fight for it. You'd fight your own people. For me? For truth, she said simply. And if that truth is you, then yes. Daniel didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He'd fought so many wars, but this was a different kind of battle. One he didn't know how to win. When she finally turned to leave, she stopped beside him and said softly, Do not run from the bond, Daniel. The stars have already chosen. He watched her walk away, her form glowing faintly under the twin suns. And for the first time since he had arrived on this strange world, Daniel didn't feel like an outsider anymore. He didn't know if he believed in soul resonance, but when she spoke his name, something deep within him whispered back, Stay. The news spread faster than light, across both human and Valaran networks. One story dominated every screen. The Princess of Valara has chosen a human soldier as her mate. At first, Daniel thought it was some kind of exaggerated rumor. But when he walked through the palace halls, Valarans stopped and stared. Some with wide eyes, some with quiet judgment. He could feel their thoughts even if he couldn't understand their language. To them he was a stranger, a flaw in their perfect world. The ambassador tried to calm him. These things pass, he said, avoiding Daniel's eyes. It's politics. Stay quiet, follow orders, and soon people will forget. But Daniel knew they wouldn't. Not when the declaration came from the princess herself. The royal council gathered the next morning, their voices rising in anger. This bond cannot be allowed, one elder thundered. A human cannot carry royal blood. She is young, another said sharply. She has been misled by curiosity. This will shame our people. Saren stood at the center of the council chamber, calm and still. Her hands were folded in front of her, but her voice when she spoke carried the strength of a storm. I have not been misled, she said. I have seen the truth in him. He is brave, loyal, and kind. Those are not flaws, and they are virtues. Her words only angered them more. You speak of kindness as if it changes bloodlines. You would risk the throne for a human soldier? She met their eyes, unflinching. For him, I would risk much more. Daniel heard every word from where he stood outside the chamber doors. He shouldn't have been listening, but he couldn't walk away. His stomach twisted painfully. He didn't deserve this, her defense, her courage, her faith. He wasn't a hero. He was just a man trying to survive his own past. When the meeting ended, the heavy doors opened and Saren stepped out. Her expression was calm, but her eyes glowed faintly, the way Veleron's did when emotion ran deep. "You heard?" she said quietly. Daniel nodded. "They're right, you know. You'll lose everything if you keep this up. Your people will hate you for it. They already do," she replied simply. He frowned. "Then why? Why fight for something that can only hurt you?" Saren looked at him, and in her gaze there was no fear, only truth. "Because the bond is not about comfort. It is about truth. And truth is never easy." He shook his head, stepping back. "I don't belong here, Saren. You need to stop this before it gets worse. Before they take you away from your people." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "And what of you, Daniel? Will you walk away from something real just because it's difficult?" He wanted to answer, but his throat felt tight. He turned his face away, ashamed of the weakness in his chest. "I'm just a soldier," he said quietly. "You're a princess. We live in different worlds." Saren smiled faintly, sadness flickering across her face. "Different worlds share the same stars. That means there is always a bridge between them." He didn't know how to argue with that. That night, the palace lights dimmed early. The air felt heavy, full of unspoken things. Daniel sat by his window, staring out at the twin moons. For the first time, he wished he could understand the language of the stars. Maybe then he could tell if fate was laughing at him. Far across the courtyard, he saw Saren standing alone on her balcony, her silver hair glowing in the moonlight. She looked up at the same sky he did, and somehow, even from that distance, he felt her presence, soft, warm, and unyielding. He closed his eyes and whispered to himself, "What are you doing, Daniel? She deserves better, someone who belongs." But the next breath he took carried her name in it, quietly, helplessly. And though he didn't know it yet, the storm he feared was already gathering, not just around them but within their hearts. Because love, once spoken into the universe, cannot be unheard. Days passed, and the palace no longer felt peaceful. Whispers followed Daniel everywhere. Veleron nobles looked at him with cold eyes, and even some of the human diplomats kept their distance, afraid to stand near him. To them, he was not a soldier anymore. He was the man who had caused a storm between two worlds. Saren, however, refused to hide. Every morning she walked through the palace gardens beside him, even when her own council glared at her. She smiled as if nothing in the world could shake her faith. But Daniel could see the pain behind that calm expression. He noticed how her fingers trembled when she thought no one was looking. One evening, the human ambassador came to Daniel's quarters. His face was pale, his voice heavy. "Orders came from Earth's council," he said. "You're being recalled. They think your presence here is dangerous." Daniel froze. "Dangerous?" The ambassador nodded. "They don't want another conflict. The Velaran Council demanded your removal. They said you've interfered with their royal traditions." Daniel clenched his fists. "So that's it? They want to throw me out because she cares about me?" "This isn't about feelings, soldier," the ambassador said sharply. "This is about politics. Go quietly and maybe peace will survive." "Peace?" Daniel almost laughed. The word tasted bitter. What kind of peace was built on tearing two people apart? When Saren found out, she came to him in fury. Her usual calm was gone. Her eyes blazed like the suns themselves. "They cannot take you from me," she said, voice trembling. "I will not allow it." Daniel looked away, unable to meet her eyes. "You have to, Saren. This isn't your fight. If I stay, they'll punish you too. Maybe worse." She stepped closer, her voice breaking. "I do not care what they do to me. I care about you." He shook his head. "You don't understand. I'm just a man, Saren. I don't have power or a crown or even a place in your world. You'll lose everything for me." Saren's voice softened. "Then I will rebuild everything with you." The words nearly broke him. He wanted to believe them. He wanted to believe love was strong enough to conquer worlds, but the soldier inside him knew how cruel reality could be. That night he packed his things in silence. His hands moved slowly, heavy with the weight of goodbye. When he reached for his uniform jacket, he noticed something glimmering inside the pocket. A small crystal pendant, glowing faintly with silver light. He recognized it immediately. It was from her. Saren had given it to him days ago, saying it was a symbol of connection. A heartstone, she called it. As long as he carried it, she would feel his heartbeat across any distance. He closed his hand around it tightly, fighting the ache rising in his chest. When dawn came, the sky burned with twin sunrises. The transport ship waited silently on the landing pad. Daniel walked toward it with heavy steps, each one feeling like a betrayal. He could hear the murmurs of both humans and Valarans around him, but all he saw was her, standing at the far end of the platform. Saren's hair shimmered like liquid light in the morning glow. She didn't move, didn't speak, she just watched him, her eyes full of hurt and hope at once. He stopped a few meters away, his throat dry. "You should go back inside," he said quietly. "People are watching." She took one step forward, tears gathering in her eyes. "Let them watch. I want them to see what it means to love without fear." Daniel swallowed hard, his heart breaking. "Saren, please don't make this harder." Her voice trembled as she whispered, "Do not call me princess. Call me Saren." He looked at her for a long moment. "Goodbye, Saren." She shook her head, tears falling silently. "No, not goodbye. The bond will not break." He turned before she could see his tears and stepped into the shuttle. As the doors closed, he pressed the glowing pendant to his chest. Through the small window, he saw her lift her hand, her lips forming the words he couldn't hear. But he knew what she was saying. "I will find you." The engines roared, and the world of Valara grew smaller beneath him. And in that moment, Daniel realized he wasn't leaving a planet. He was leaving half of his soul behind. The human shuttle rose quietly through the clouds, leaving the shining towers of Valara behind. Daniel sat by the window, staring at the fading light below. He had told himself this was the right choice, that leaving would protect her, save her from the anger of her people. But the truth hurt deeper than any wound he had ever carried. He still held the small glowing pendant in his hand. The heartstone, it pulsed faintly, almost like a heartbeat. Every few moments he thought he felt her presence, soft, distant but real. He whispered to himself, "I'm sorry, Saren," but fate wasn't finished with them yet. Halfway through orbit, alarms began blaring through the shuttle. Red lights flashed. The pilot shouted something, panic filling his voice. "Unknown ships incoming. They're Velaran crafts." Armed, Daniel's blood went cold. Velaran ships? They wouldn't dare attack humans. Unless... The shuttle shook violently as an explosion lit up the stars. Daniel was thrown against the seat. The pilot tried to steady the ship, but another blast tore through the hull. "We're going down!" he yelled. The world turned white. Then silence. When Daniel opened his eyes again, everything was burning. The shuttle had crashed on the edge of Valara's northern plains. Smoke rose into the twilight sky. He coughed, dragging himself out of the wreckage. The air smelled of ash and metal. In the distance, the city's defense alarms howled, the kind that meant attack. Daniel's heart dropped. It wasn't just the shuttle. The whole capital was under siege. Through the haze, he could see dark ships descending, not Valaran royal guards, but warcrafts from a rival clan. The same nobles who had opposed Saren's bond. They had chosen war to stop her. Without thinking, Daniel started running. His body ached, blood dripped down his forehead, but none of it mattered. All that mattered was getting to her. He reached the outskirts of the city just as the first explosions struck the palace walls. The air was full of chaos and the screams, fire, and the roar of engines. Valaran soldiers fought desperately, but the enemy forces were overwhelming. "Where is she?" Daniel shouted to one of the guards as he grabbed a fallen plasma rifle. The guard looked at him, startled to see a human. "The princess, she's still inside." The council told her to flee, but she refused. Of course she refused. Daniel sprinted through the burning halls, the glow of the fires painting the marble walls red and gold. The palace trembled around him. When he turned the last corner, he saw her, Saren, surrounded by fallen guards, her gown torn, holding a small energy blade in shaking hands. "Saren," he shouted. Her head snapped toward him, eyes widening in disbelief. "Daniel?" He ran to her, taking position in front of her as enemy soldiers burst through the far door. There was no time to think. He fired, his shots sharp and fast, protecting her with everything he had. When his weapon overheated, he grabbed a fallen spear, fighting like the soldier he once was, wild, desperate, unstoppable. The alien warriors were stronger, but he was faster, and his will burned hotter than fire. Blades clashed, light exploded. One by one, the attackers fell until the last of them dropped to the floor. Daniel stood there, gasping, his uniform torn and blood running down his arm. The silence that followed was deafening. Saren rushed to him, catching him before he collapsed. "You came back," she whispered, her voice shaking. He gave a weak smile.
"Didn't I tell you?"
"I'm terrible at goodbyes." She pressed her hands to his wounds, her palms glowing with soft silver light as she tried to heal him. "Stay with me. Please, Daniel. Stay." He looked up at her, his vision fading at the edges. "Guess it, you were right. The stars did choose." Tears streamed down her face. "Don't you dare leave me now." He reached for her hand, gripping it weakly. "I'm not leaving. Not again." Outside, the enemy ships were retreating, their leader fallen, their forces broken. The city would survive, but its people would remember the sight of a human soldier standing in front of their princess, defending her with his life. When Daniel finally closed his eyes, the heartstone around his neck pulsed brighter, its light joining hers, glowing together as if the stars themselves bowed to their bond. And for that single moment, love had conquered fear, and two worlds had become one. When Daniel opened his eyes again, everything was white. For a moment, he thought he had died. The silence was soft, peaceful, endless. Then slowly he heard a voice, gentle, trembling, and so familiar. "Daniel, please open your eyes." It was Saren. His vision cleared. She was sitting beside him, her silver hair unbound, her eyes swollen from crying. The soft glow of the healing chamber surrounded them both. Daniel realized he was lying on a crystal bed covered in faint blue light. His wounds were gone, though his body still felt weak. He blinked. "Am I alive?" Saren let out a shaky laugh, tears running down her cheeks. "Barely. You stopped breathing twice. The healers said no human could survive what you did." He smiled faintly. "Guess they don't know humans very well." Her laughter broke into sobs, and she leaned forward, resting her forehead against his chest. "Don't ever do that again. You almost tore my heart apart." His hand moved to her hair, fingers brushing softly through the silver strands. "Couldn't let them hurt you. You're my—" He paused, realizing the words were no longer strange to him. "You're my everything." Saren looked up, her golden eyes shining. "And you are mine." For a long time they said nothing. The soft hum of the chamber filled the air, and outside the city was rebuilding. The war had ended. The council had fallen silent, their pride broken by the sight of the princess standing over a human who had nearly died to protect her. When Daniel was strong enough to walk again, the people gathered before the palace. Thousands of Velerans stood there, soldiers, nobles, and workers alike, all waiting to see what their princess would decide. She appeared at the top of the palace steps, dressed in a white ceremonial robe that shimmered under the twin suns. Daniel stood beside her, wearing a simple human jacket patched with the mark of the royal crest.
"He didn't want to be there."
He hated attention, but she held his hand tightly, refusing to let go. Saren raised her voice so all could hear. "You saw what he did for me. You saw how a human, a stranger, risked his life to defend our world. While our enemies attacked, he fought to protect our home. While others doubted, he stood by me." A murmur spread through the crowd. She turned, looking at Daniel. "When I first met him, I didn't understand his kind. I thought humans were reckless, fragile, full of noise. But I was wrong." Her eyes softened. "He is strong because he feels. He is brave because he loves. And today I claim him, not as a servant or guest, but as my equal, my protector, and my mate." The crowd gasped. Even the guards exchanged glances. No Veleran royal had ever chosen someone from another world. Daniel stood still, stunned. "Saren!" But she smiled, that same warm, defiant smile he had fallen for. "You don't get to run away this time." Then she turned back to the crowd. "If any still doubt him, look at the sky. The bond between our worlds has already begun. It started with him." As she spoke, the twin suns rose higher, their light catching on the heartstone hanging around Daniel's neck. The stone pulsed once, then again, sending a wave of light across the plaza. The people gasped as the glow spread, touching every Veleran crystal, every beam of metal, until the whole city shone with the same color as the human heart that had saved them. The light faded, leaving silence. And then slowly the people bowed, to both of them. Daniel looked at her, eyes soft with disbelief. "They're really accepting this?" Saren nodded. "Because love changes everything. Even galaxies listen when hearts speak." He laughed quietly, wrapping an arm around her waist. "You sure about this, princess?" She leaned close, whispering, "No, but I'm sure about you." He smiled, pulling her gently into his arms as the wind carried the sound of their people cheering. And in that moment, surrounded by two suns, two hearts and two worlds finally united, Daniel understood something powerful. It was never about being human or alien. It was about being brave enough to love.